in Samech Vav.
So, we saw that through the Ma'amakim Chosicha, that was the Aveda of Tshuva, Tshuva Amitias, that is Magia and elevates into Atzmus Mamish. For our Indian here, it's Indian of the Tainug, Aposhet Akol be Atzmusay. But it is a Mamshit, Teisves, Eres, Betera, Umitzves, Gamke. We saw that through Tshuva Amitias, he reaches that level in Tainug Atzmi, that that's Mashpia also into his keeping, learning Torah and Kiyum HaMitzvahs. Gam Eisich HaTorah v'Kiyum HaMitzvah Sha'ach HaTshuva Meir Bo Gam Kein M'chinas Tainug HaAtzmi Mamish. That's what we saw, the diuk that occurs in certain places. The Rebbe brings it here. In a minute, that we see that our sages use the expression tshuva u'maisim tovim, like we see in Pirkei Avos. Yofe sha'achas b'tshuva u'maisim tovim b'olam hazeh. The Rebbe bring another dogma here from the Gemara, that dafke alidei tshuva, then the maisim become maisim tovim. In other words, that the hashpah, that aliyah in Atzmus, into the Tainug HaPoshut, but that has an effect on the whole Kiyum HaTorah Mitzvahs of the order. Then his whole Torah Mitzvahs become illuminated by that Gilui Atzmi, and they become Maisim Tovim U'Me'irim, is the expression. The Alter brings it in Likutei Torah, as we said, in a couple of other places, maybe even 2 or 3 places mentioned in the Likutei Torah and the Alter Rebbe, that the tshuva causes that the maisim become maisim tovim. So therefore, there's the necessity for there to be tshuva before the maisim tovim. But from that it appears, as we mentioned already several times, that the tshuva that we're talking about here doesn't necessarily mean tshuva from somebody who's been a Bal Avedas and therefore he has to do tshuva and Avedas biyodei. No, we're talking about our concept of tshuva in the sense of always going higher and leaving behind the previous madrega, even though it may have been a madrega in Torah mitzvahs itself. It may have been a madrega ruchnias. After it became the restlessness of emes tshuva carries him higher and higher, and makes him, as it were, wrestle where he's been up to now, because of its lack of any worth regarding what he could really be achieving. And that's the yearning keseder upwards on the part of the Baal Tshuva Amiti. So therefore he said that type of tshuva is mashpia, that the maisim become not stam maisim, but they become maisim tovim. Stam maisim in the Mishnah doesn't just mean any sort of maisim. Obviously it means a maisim of Torah or mitzvah. So what's the deal with maisim tovim? To say that that's a special light and illumination that's been nimshach from the tshuva into the maisim, and that turns them, as you saw here, into another inyan of maisim tovim and Me'irim alidei the Gilui Atzmus from Tainug HaAtzmi Mamish. So we saw that was what's brought down in Haftarah Parashat Tshuva, Shuva Yisrael Ad Havaya Lekechem. We touched out the Lashon Ad Havaya. So then the continuation of that verse over there in Hosea, in the Haftarah Shabbos Shuva, is, he says Shuva Yisrael Ad Hashem Elekecha, and then he says K'chu imochem dvorim Vashuvu El Hashem. So first of all he says Shuva Yisrael, and he tells them that they should do tshuva, and then he adds, take with you things, literally, or words, Vashuvu El Hashem, and you should go back to the Eibishter. So what's that? What's that adding to what has already been said? And what does it mean to take with you devorim, take with you things? So therefore the Rebbe is now mefarish, dvorim, what does he mean? What are these dvorim that you should take with you on your tshuva, on your way back to Hashem? So he said dvorim is referring to Torah and mitzvahs. Like we say in Kriya Shema, v'hoyu hadvorim ha'ele, she'anochi mitzavcha yom ha'lavavecha. So the Gemara says in Masechta Brachos, in the first parak, that's referring to divrei Torah, v'hoyu hadvorim v'divrei Torah ha'kosav medaber. But the simple pashtus of the pasuk is that we began by saying Shema, but Shema is a mitzvah to be koyre as a Shema. And so he said, it's also referring to the mitzvah of Shema, and also to the other mitzvahs which are mentioned in that passage, because he talks about tefillin and mezuzah, and learning Torah, shinantum levanecha, it's even learning Torah with your children, but those are all in of mitzvahs. So therefore the pshata poshet of the pasuk is referring to mitzvah. However, the Gemara says devorim is also referring to Torah, to limudat Torah. So therefore, the word devorim is koilul in itself, both Torah and mitzvah. So that Novi says, go back to the Eibishter in that high madrega of Chud takes you into Atzmus Mamish, and you should take with you your Torah and mitzvahs. Hu imochem dvorim de Torah hu mitzvahs. Ushuvo elavaya lahoir bedvarim halalo the Torah mitzvahs or shemavaya haniflo hazeh the mipchinas mimamakim. So what he means is that when you've reached that madrega through the embassy Indian of tshuva, then you should take with you your Torah mitzvahs and bring them also into the benefit of that tshuva. Therefore, shuvo elavaya means to continue and go further in that level of Aveda which brought you to Atzmus Ein Seif. Take your Torah mitzvahs and keep working at it, keep going into the Atzmus and the Tainah Raposha Atzmi, and that will be Meir Dvarim Halolu, that meaning the Torah mitzvahs, that will be Meir with the wondrous light. Here Hashem Haniflo, the Shem Havaya Haniflo, the Mibchinus Mama Mimamakim. Right? We touched the first Mem, or that's the union of Keser Shebekesa, or that's the new Shem Havaya we saw. That's a Madrega Shem Havaya Deli Eilo, the higher level in the Shem Havaya, which is higher in the Shem Havaya, how it is in the Sphere. And that's where you reach through the union of Tshuva. And that's the having reached that madrega, then you should take all your Torah mitzvahs and let them benefit in that tshuva from that kilui that you reached in the Shem Havaya HaChodosh, as we call it, like a new level in the Shem Havaya. And here he calls it the Shem Havaya HaNiflo. Okemaima, as the Gemara says, Tachlis Chochma Tshuva Maisim Toivim. That is a statement of Rava in the Gemara. Omar Rava, or Marga, it's actually written in the Gemara that Rava used to say this often. It was a common thing. He had called a Marga li befume. As they bring to Gemara, it means a dover rogo in his mouth. That he used to say often that the tachlis of Chochma is tshuva maisim toivim. There's a whole Biyun, a whole Maimah, as a matter of fact, from the Friedrich Rebbe on that statement of the Gemara in the Drushia Chasana. You're familiar with the Maimorim that the Friedrich Rebbe said during the Sheva Brocha, the Chasana and the Sheva Brochas of the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. So one of those Maimorim begins with that Maimah Chazal, that Marga lebefume de Rava, Tachlis Chochma, the final aim or the purpose, as you might say, of all Chochma is to come to Tshuva Maisim Toivim. There's a whole famous beer over there in that statement of the Gemara. But just by the way, it's of interest that Gemara is in the same Omid, in the same Hemshech, the Gemara which we brought earlier about the Inif and Eilam Habor. The Eilam Habor is saying Boiloi Achila V'lo Yisasiya, the Tzadikim Yoshvim V'nenin V'chulu. As Behemshech to that, Gemara brings to Gemara this business about Rava. So from Rava we see that the purpose of learning Chochmah is the Torah. The whole purpose of Torah is to bring you that you should be in a matzav of tshuva u'maisim toivim. So we see here the diuk is davke tshuva prior to maisim toivim. In other words, the tshuva koidem l'maisim toivim. That's the union of tshuva affects the maisim and turns them into maisim toivim. Validei zeh a maisim toivim umei ilim. Now that's the lesson of the Alter Rebbe in the Torah. So he teaches what do we mean by the word toiv. I mean, the word toiv is a very general expression. It can mean all sorts of benefits and good things. So therefore, in this particular inyan, toiv means something which illuminates and gives off light. So he said, Alidei, what you see, the whole purpose of learning and understanding is only to bring to tshuva, and that tshuva is to bring you to light up your Torah mitzvahs, or then be'emes your Torah mitzvahs give off light. In other words, when I mentioned he's in Azar Madrega, does a mitzvah or ma'aser toiv, then people sort of feel enthusiasm, they feel, that this is a mention, he's got a koyach with his ma'aser to be mashpia on the sviva around him. And that's the union of ma'asim me'idim. So that's a very amazing thing, because the word chokhmah, as we said, refers to Torah, and can even refer to the sphere of chokhmah and lamata. Ve'ilu tshuva is a very high madrega, as we saw here. He said, nonetheless, that's the chiddush of Rova. He said that you shouldn't think that studying Torah is just to know things, and you shouldn't think that the study of Torah is just to know holy things, to know what are the halachas and know what are the dinim, and to be malumad in Inyan Torah. The whole tachlis of Torah is to bring you to that yearning to go higher and higher. The whole purpose of learning Torah is to get you in to a situation where you can be yearning all the time higher into Atzma, saying Seivo, that's in from tshuva, and that turns your maisim, your mitzvahs, not only into maisim al Torah, but maisim teivim me'irim. That was the whole union of yeshivas Tomchei Tmimim. That's why the Rebbe founded the yeshiva, because he said there's a lot of other yeshivas. It wasn't need to found a new yeshiva, because the whole purpose of the chokhmah, the learning in Tomchei Tmimim, so learning chassidus particularly, was to bring the mensch to see that all the inyanim that he learns are only to inform him how he has to do tshuva. That's what he writes in the Maimah over there, that chokhmah and tshuva are almost like two opposites. Chokhmah is wisdom, and tshuva is what he calls over there frum. A frum means somebody that's really trying to get somewhere with his Torah. It's a very, very interesting word in Yiddish, frum. So he says that how does one bring to the other? He said, if you learn Torah the right way, and you learn Torah with Kabbalah Soil, and you see that Torah has an ultimate purpose, that it's supposed to achieve something, bring you a higher tachlis, not just to know, not just to have wisdom, well, then you bring the Torah brings you to a union of tshuva, and that brings you to that your mitzvahs and your maisim turn into maisim teivim me'idim. Whatever we saw that all the big Talmidim of the first Tomchei Tmimim, that they were all Yidden that went out and became Rabbonim, and they became Mashpim, and people in all sorts of places in Russia. They had Mesilas Nefesh to bring Yiddishkeit to all the distant towns and distant cities, even though they were tremendous Lomdim and Oiv D'Hashem, and they used to daven for hours and all sorts of good Sachen inside Tomchei Tmimim. But they all went out, and their Maisim were Teivim Me'irim. They were Meir, the whole Saviva at that time, in a very, very difficult time for Yidden and for the world. If you remember the same thing now, there's also a very difficult time for Yidden and the world. If you remember, we've got to be Anshe Tshuva and Maisim Teivim. We've got to yearn on the one hand to go upwards and higher, but at the same time we've got to light up the world and illuminate the world with the words of the emes, and the words of the emes are from the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. Only his words are the emes which is going to break the whole darkness, and that's the union of chokhmah only to bring to tshuva, and the tshuva brings to maisim teivim me'irim, because if you give over the Rebbe's inyanim to people, then you see that they react positive when they begin to hear and they begin to know what the Rebbe said. And they think for a minute, then they begin to see that, wow, this is really what they really needed to be to be hearing. Some people, are locked up in all sorts of prejudiced or pre-assumed ideas and pre-assumed inyonim, and so it's a bit harder to get through to them. So then you have to maybe do it in a more intensive way, but not in a negative way. And hopefully, all these inyonim, just like they were, b'yomim ha'im, there's also be b'zman hazeh. Hazeh Omar, and it's in reference to that the Pasuk said, "Mibchinas Mayim Chaim Hanal." From that Mayim Chaim, we saw those are the mayim that they struggle upwards through the passage, the levels of the earth, and the earth pieces and the rocks and all the stones and everything on their way up, and they become Mayim Chaim. Shalidei Tshuva Yom Shachet Yom. Half of those Mayim Chaim will go El Yamakad Moini. But they go out to the primordial sea, literally, that's the Indian from Torah, because Torah is called in the Pasuk in Koheles, what he calls the Torah Mashal HaKadmoni, the Mashal, the primordial Mashal, or the Mashal from the primordial one, meaning the Eibishter. So Kadmoni refers to Torah. So there is a Chet Yom El Yam HaKadmoni, B'chinas HaTorah, the Chet Yom El Hayam Ha'achrein, and the hemshech of that verse is that the other half of the waters are going to pour out from the great split that will occur in Haras Esim alongside the Beis Hamikdash. The other half of them will go to the Yom Ha'achrein, literally to the last sea. So that means the west, on the western side. There'll be on the Kadmoni, means on the east. There'll be on the western side, but it's called Yom Ha'achrein, the last sea. So he says, Hein Maisim Tovim B'Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim Shleimo Shenikra Yom Ha'achrein. In other words, at the first half of the waters, they will go to the tzad, which is Mitzad Learning Torah, Yam HaKadmoni. We saw that'll be a very high madrega, and they'll even be moisif into the Yam HaKadmoni. And then we saw they'll be higher than the Yam HaKadmoni. However, the other half of the waters, they will go to the other side, that's Yom HaAchrein, the final sea, or the last sea. So the Rebbe said that's doing, Ma'asim Tovim B'Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim Shleimo, with complete Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim, and that's called Yom HaAchrein. So why would that be called the sea, the final sea? Why would that be Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim? So it's well known that Malchus Shamayim has gotten so two amazing extremimes. That on the one hand, Kabbalah Sel Malchus Shamayim is like the lowest thing in the koiches of a mensch. When you get to his seichel and his midas, he puts it all aside. He just does it with simple taking on himself of a yoke. But therefore, that's called like a finality. The finality and the simplicity. Like I think you guys, I don't know what you did. Some people in this program learned the famous sikha from the Rebbe when they get to the four kittas that they were on the edge of the Yam Suf before the Yam Suf split itself. And so one of the yonim what the Rebbe brings up over there, you got to go with Kabbalah Soil. And even though Kabbalah Soil looks very sort of simple and downward, doesn't seem to be a very elevated thing. Dafki through Kabbalah Soil, you come to the highest in Yonim. Therefore, that's why he calls Kabbalah Soil on the one hand is called Achrein, but on the other hand it's called Yam HaAchrein, that is called the final sea. What sea indicates a very deep madrega, as the sea is deep, Kamayim L'Yam Machasim, through the union of Kabbalah Soil, then you come to a very, very high madrega, which is similar to what you come through the union of Tshuva. So therefore he said, "V'hainu sheyum shachal hidizeh toisuf es oyer b'Torah o a mitzvah." In other words, the Kabbalah Soil is like a form of tshuva, because when you give yourself away just to absolute simplicity, it's like as if you're declaring that everything you really got is nothing, and you're just giving yourself away to Hashem's will. Well, that's a form of tshuva. So therefore, through that you also amamshich into your Torah mitzvah, and you turn them into Maisim Me'irim. So Atam, he said, now we'll understand why it is Masha Malcha Mashicha Osi li asfo tzadikaya v'tiyufta. It's written in the Zohar Kodesh. Not exactly that Lashon, but it appears that that's the kavanah of the Zohar Kodesh. Over there, it's in Bamidbar. I think it is Pasha Balish Rabal Chaponim. It's in the third chelik of the Zohar Kodesh. What the Zohar Kodesh says that Melech HaMashiach, one of his functions will be to bring back the tzaddikim also to tshuva. As so to say, what on earth is that? I mean, the tzaddikim, if they're tzaddikim, then they don't need to do tshuva. They're tremendously elevated people. Ella, the tzaddikim, like we saw here the whole time, they're not able to stand in the madrega, the Baal Tshuva, because their Inyan is kiruv and the vekas in the tainug of the Eibishter, but it's a tainug which comes into Chochmah and it's got a certain harkova in the madrega of the spheres, because it's an ordered thing and it's a tremendously elevated and high thing in Kedusha. But Mashiach will bring them to such a inyan in avodas Hashem. That's the pshat. Not bring them to tshuva of having done negative things, chas v'sholom. But he will bring them that they will also be oila into this madrega of impatience and intense yearning to go up into Atzmus Ein Sof. Well, that's the madrega the Baal Tshuva, and that'll be a great chesed that Melech HaMoshiach will grant to the tzaddikim. Therefore, he will bring them to tiyufta. Tiyufta meaning needing for tshuva. In order to do them that great chesed that they won't be any more in a state where they can't stand in the place of the Bali Tshuva. No, Adarabba, he will elevate them through bringing them also to tshuva. He will elevate them into the madrega, and they'll be able to stand together with the Bali Tshuva. In order to come to that tainug, how it is mamish in the atzmus Ein Sof, and it's tainug ne'elam lagam, it's hidden, and it doesn't come down begolim to any madrega of the spheres. Kamoi shehu bi atzmus mamish, like we saw, the tzaddikim are complete and they're absolutely perfect in their Torah or mitzvahs, but like we saw, there's needed a new inyan which is called tshuva. In other words, that the type of Torah mitzvahs done by the emes of Baal Tshuva is also higher and more elevated than that done by the tzaddikim, and therefore they're going to have to be elevated into that level so that they'll be able to stand in the same madrega, meaning liosi, there won't be that einam yecholim la'amid b'mokim ha'Bali Tshuva. No, they will be able to stand and they'll be together in the same madrega with the Bali Tshuva. Well, for that we see very clearly, and it's ein it's not to have any mistake here, I feel for our rega, that the whole kavona in this whole piece that we've seen, but again to tshuva, on Bali Teshuva, even though we mentioned the Ma'aser Rebbe Elazar ben Dudayo, he was Rachmanin Klan at the beginning, he was a Balavader. That's what I think we explained when we mentioned the word Durdayo it's like a nickname, because Durdayo means dregs. It's things left at the bottom of a liquid, something that they've already gone a bit bad and they sink to the bottom, but that's called Durdayo in the Lashon of the Gemara. So he was called Rebbe Elazar ben Dudayo, because he was into not such good things, as we pointed out. Nonetheless, he got to a very high madrega through his Mesiras Nefesh, and having given away his neshama mamish as he passed out with the whole riches to the Eibishter. But normally speaking, and the pshat in the whole hemshech of this maimah here doesn't mean tshuva in the sense that somebody's just an avera nikah and he's got to do tshuva. He would have to do tshuva on simple levels first, and then somehow or another get himself into the level of kedusha. Like we see the Alter Rebbe in Perek Yud Zayin, the Alter Rebbe brings over there that all that we'd said in Tanya up to that point doesn't imply to those who are Shoyim, PMs, what he calls them over there, that they've been Oiva, the Torah Mamish. He said they can't possibly be Lavi des Hashem. They can't serve the Eibishter, Elohim Kain Yasu Tshuva Tchila. But there he means Tshuva in a simple sense. The that they got to get out of the clippers, like you said. Over there, if you look it up in Perek Yudzayin, that Ali Deiseh, they break the Mechitza, they built like a wall between themselves and the Eibishter, and the Yinif and Tshuva breaks it. So that means the Yinif and Tshuva in the simple sense. Over here, we're talking about Tshuva on an elevated Madrege. What we pointed out that it's a tremendous energy released in the neshama of a person who sees that everything he achieves is nothing worth like what he could be achieving, what's higher and incomparably better. In other words, that the tshuva mentioned here is what we call aliyah kol asman b'toiv, not cholila, anything that's really got to do with the negative. But it's not just stamina aliyah, but it's a tremendously driving, a restless aliyah. And that's the union of what even the tzaddikim are going to have to reach that type of avoid. And that bring them into the same madrega as the Bali Tshuva. They'll be able to stand b'mokim Bali Tshuva, and that will bring the Gila, the Tainu Gan Lelam, to Kol Klal Yisrael, not only to the Bali Tshuva, but also to the tzaddikim. That will be Mishkala, taken from Miyad Mamish, Begula Shleima, taken from Miyad now. Mamish. So far, we see a sikum in the whole summing up of the whole union, and that affects the type of mitzvahs and limud haTorah on the part of the Adam, and it's well known that even when Mashiach will come, at least up to a certain point, there will still be the inif and kiyum mitzvahs. So, but then there'll be betachlis hashleimas, as it brought down in certain places in Siddur, and particularly in a famous emshech from the Rebbe Mashvi talks about that barichis, that liyasid lovei. The mitzvahs will be, like we say, by the korbanos, kemitzvahs tzei necha, the way you really wanted it to be from the beginning. According to all this, Yuvan Mashukosu Vaishlach Yankiv Malachim, that Yankiv sent these angels, and they were shluchim, and messengers, but they were real angels, as Rashi tells us, to Esav, in order to try and find out what's happening with Esav and where's he holding. And he told him, he told the Malachim, that I should say to Esav, Im Lavan Gati, that I dwelled with Lavan, and like he brings down over there, Rashi and the Rebbe quoted at the beginning of the parasha, but Rashi in the second pshat, he says that I lived with Lavan, but I kept all the 613 commandments. What Garti is B'gematria Tariyag. It's the same mispah as Tariyag, but that indicates that he kept all the mitzvahs, Yankiv. And so we asked, what was the purpose of him telling that to Esav, and what was Beklal, the whole purpose of him sending these messengers to Esav? The Hinein is Bu'aliyil, in the Maimah prior to this one, the Hiluk Yankiv L'Lovon Hoye Levare Bir. Here's an interesting cloud. Things that would happen in this world are not always for the purpose that appears begoloi. It would appear, if you just look in the simple pesukim, that Yankiv went across to Padan Aram to Lavan, because he was fleeing from his brother Esav. Yeah, Esav was very angry that he took away from him the book and was planning to kill him, etc. So Yaakov fled in order to escape Esav, and therefore Rashi brings over there at the end of Parshat tell this, that he was chased after by the son of Esav, and he caught up with him. He wanted to kill him, and the whole that happened over there, the whole discussion between him and Eliphaz ben Esav. No doubt you remember the whole Riches brought down over there in Rashi. So he was getting away. He was fleeing from a situation where he couldn't stay anymore. It was dangerous, and he had to get into an area where he'd be protected from Esav. However, said the Rebbe, that's only just Begoli Hadvarim. That was just a sibah that Hashem made, that Yaakov had to go. But what did he really go for? What did Hashem really want out of the going of Yaakov over to Lavan? Was that he wanted him to be Mavara Bir birudim. He wanted him to, as it were, separate off madregas and elevate madregas and push down things that weren't able to be included in Kedusha. Well, that's called the union of birur, separation and clarification. And that's why we'll soon see what sort of birur it was. Very high union. Yaakov Avinu achieved when he was over there, because he was busy with the flocks of Lavan. What that's called in Lashon Kodesh, Tzuin Lavan. And it was quite a few years. It was altogether 20 years. First of all, 7 years prior to his marriage. And then there was, he married Leah, and then shortly after Rachel. And then he worked another 7 years as part of that agreement. And then after that, there was another 6 years where he was working with the son of Lavan in a way that he was already taking away all the goods from Lavan and bringing it over to him, with the whole union of the machlis and the whole sipur. Well, that took 6 years. So altogether, 14 and 6 to 20, it was 20 years that he was in the house of Lavan. And Be'ikar, he was concerned with the union of the flocks. And Yaakov Avinu was busy the whole time with these flocks. And particularly in those last 6 years, but it was a very careful, calculated effort on the part of Yaakov Avinu to take away certain flocks from Lavan and to bring them into his area, and they were marked in a certain way. They had certain aspects about them. Well, all these inyonim are indicative of very high things in Pnimi Advarim, because Kamuvan, the Torah doesn't tell us any mices, just stam to tell me Sipurim. Each Indian has got himself a tremendous Pnimius and Hoirah for all the generations to come. So he said that therefore Yaakov Avinu went through all that work, and particularly in those last 6 years, he was working with the son of Lavan. He went to be Mevarer Berudim. Omnom, however, Zehu Mashabira Lamaila. Well, that's what Yaakov Avinu was Mevarer in the upper Oilamas, B'Pchinas HaToiv V'Akedusha. The Be'ikah, the Bira of Yaakov Avinu was concerned, and it centered itself, and it was around the levels of Toiv Kedusha. V'Ainu, Masha Bira B'Pchinas Akudim Nikudim Chulu. But everybody knows that there's a third word there, Akudim Nikudim Brudim. Put down over there in the pasuk that Yaakov Avinu chose, and he, through the fact that he chose certain sheep, then he became tremendously rich in flocks, but they were all marked, and they were marked either Akudim, Nikudim, or Brudim. That's the third word. We'll soon mention in a minute what that's about. Shazehu Klolos Olam Ha Tikkun. Well, that's the generality of the Olam HaTikkun. Abiru hoyo beha-oirois shenoshru v'noflu mibchinas loivein ha'elyoin. Now this is a reference to Lavan. As he's called in Yiddish, the Vetter Lavan, the big uncle Lavan. He was quite an uncle. This Lavan is, the word Lavan is from the word white. So the word Lavan is an ordinary adjective, white. Loiven, that's the noun, whiteness. Whiteness, be'etem. So therefore, Lavan, he represented a thing called Loiven ha'elyoin. And Yaakov Avinu was concerned with that. Shekol zeh habiru hula maila. Oh, this biru is still in the Oinamus haraya lamaila. Biru, and the actual biru itself, is through Torah and mitzvah. So what is he referring to here, the Rebbe, with all those expressions? So briefly, it's like this, that Olam HaTikkun means what was the ultimate result after Olam HaToihu, and Olam HaToihu was the world in which there occurred what's called the Shviras HaKelim de Toihu, the breakage of the vessels inside the world of Toihu. And the union of Toihu had in itself two, or the breakage of the Kelim in Toihu had in itself two aspects or facets. That on the one hand, the Kelim, they broke and fell, and they had a big Yerida, the Kelim. But the oiros of Toihu, they were mistalek l'mayla. They left the kalim. They completely withdrew from the kalim. They withdrew into a much higher level than they were in the Gilui, how it was in Olam HaTohu. And they went back to a higher yichud with the Eibishter, because they were very, very high levels in Oyer. And the kalim fell down drastically into the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. Well, the truth of the matter is that also a certain trace of them fell into Atzilas. But we'll soon see in a minute how that worked. And so those are the three inyonim of Akudim, Nikudim, and Brudim. Now, Akudim means marks on the animals that are like, they go around the body of the animal, sort of like in a circular way that surround the body of the animal. Nikudim means dots. They're spots. In other words, there were certain of them that they had spots on them. And then there were Brudim, which Brudim means more like long-shaped marks, but sort of combined. They sort of link together. They sort of move one into the other a bit, and they sort of spread out over the body of the animal, but they're sort of linked together.
Zigzag.
Huh? Yeah, like zigzag. Yeah, but the main thing is that they're straighter, but they're sort of linked together. That's an akudim. Ilu akudim is like circles around the body of the animal, and nikudim is dots. So they represent three oilamas l'mayla, or three stages in the Gila, the oilamas prior to Atzilas, and that is oilam akudim, and then oilam nikudim, and oilam brudim. So akudim, that's a oilam which is after Ak, it's a very high madrega, in which the kalim begin to appear, but they're not in any specific identity yet. And they're called Eser Oiros Bekli Achas. In other words, that all the oiros began to specificize somewhat, but the kalim haven't appeared yet, and they are like one kli. There's one possibility of their appearing kalim, but they're already in some form of appearance. It's still only in a general way, therefore it's called Kli Achas. So that's a very high world. That's called Olam HaKudim. But the oiros over there have already began to become specific, but there's no kalim to receive them. And the bittul of those of that world, which makes it on such a high madrega, is because everything is still bottle gabi the etzim or the Eibishter, the very essential light, which is what we call Ak, Adam Kadmon, or that's prior to Akudim. Mitzad the bittul to the very high madrega of the Gilui Ha'etzem, then all the eros Gilui also unite together, and they're all in a state of like interwovenness, but not because they really are, but because their bottle gabi this very high level, which is Meir in Akudim. However, Nikudim is Olam HaTohu. Nikudim is Olam HaTohu, because then all the spheres become dots. In other words, that each oyer comes out from Akudim in an intense light, in its own identity, with a very high, intense Gilui, and the Kalim are not able to absorb that intensity of light, even though there is already a Gilui also of the Kalim, of the 10 Kalim in Olam HaNikudim. And the truth of the matter is that there's even a certain niskalos in Tohu, alidei the slapshus in the Kalim of Tohu, but it doesn't hold in such a way that it can cause a interaction between the spheres, and therefore they break, or they collide, or they in some way interfere with one another. So the oiros withdraw. The oiros don't really have an afila, and the Kalim, because they have no oiros, then they literally, they become an initial Matthias. And Matthias has no place in such high madregas, and therefore, as it were, they begin to fall. And the more they go down, the more they fall further, as it were. They become confused and almost, you might say in inverted commas, heavy, and so they fall. And that's the Indian of the Nephilas, Nitzutzes, or the Kalim of Tohu. Now, the truth is that a slight trace of the oiros also fall together with the kalim. because Ein Dover Kedusha Nizes Mimkoimo Legama Klal, that something in Kedusha never moves out of its place. And therefore, if those oiros were malubish in the kelim in Toyu, then they never really can be taken away from the kelim. And therefore, a certain trace of them fall with the kelim. And that's what we call the nitzutzes of Toyu. In other words, the kelim are not really nitzutzes. The kelim are the inyan from what becomes the koishi of the metzius of the Nevroim, down here as well, particularly the feeling of yeshus and not feeling kedusha and all that sort of thing. Well, that's what happens with the kelim. But hidden inside those kelim are very high sparks of very high oiros that were there in Toyu. But the ikar oiros withdrew altogether, and they were what we call mistalik lamayla, and they withdrew. And so therefore the spheres over there are called dots, because they were so intense. It's like the Moshe we used before, when you're intensifying something, it tends to withdraw into one nakuda, like the idea of a magnifying glass takes the oil and makes it into one burning nakuda. Well, that's how the spheres were, that each light didn't recognize any other light, and therefore it was just too intense, both for any form of real gilui, and also the kelim weren't able to be makabel such a inyan. Therefore, everything, as it were, collapsed or broke, and that's called shviros hakelim de nikudim. That's the inyan for nikudim. And then afterwards, the Rebbe puts in the chulu, because he just assumes that you know what comes afterwards. Afterwards is brudim. Well, that's the inyan of olam hatikun, olam ha'atzilas. And olam ha'atzilas is already where the kelim have become very revealed, and they're revealed in a very ordered way, and the oiros enter them, and the mislabish in the kelim, and everything functions in a way of tikkun, how do you call it, maintenance or properness. And then the kelim, because they're such good kelim to the oil, they're able to interact with other kelim and other oiros and so on, and so it becomes a world of achdus, and that's the ultimate tatlis when you get to the Olamas Hayah prior to Bria Yitzir Vasiyah. That's called the three Olamas Hayah prior to the actual creation, Akudim, Nikudim, Brudim. Now Yankiv Avinu, he went over to this Indian from Son Lovon because he wanted his Indian, even though he didn't maybe realize it at that moment, but he began to realize it very shortly afterwards, that his Indian was to be mavarer in the oiroi shenoshru v'noflu. That they fell. Now the word noshru means, a tree that falls off a tree. It sort of wobbles for a while and then it just sort of floats down onto the ground. Or leaves, also called alim shenoshru min ha'ilon. They sort of flop a bit and they get unsteady and then they fall down off the tree. So from this Indian of Nikudim and from the Shviros HaKelim that occurred there, then fell down certain oiros, as we call them, only sparks of oiros, not the real oiros, or they collapsed and fell from the state of Loiv and Noelian, and that's Lovan. He's the one that owns the clock. That's the word tzoin. But the word tzoin is brought down in Siddur. The word tzoin means to go out. Tzei. If you say to somebody, go out, then you say to him, tzei. So the word tzoin is tzadik aleph nun. That indicates going out. So that was the Indian of tzoin lovon, that from the madrega of lovon, how he is in Pneumius, what he is the loivan ho'eliyah. And that means the most intense whiteness, but that's the oiros of Toyu, because they're very high madrega, and therefore they're called the most intense whiteness. And they, certain nitzutzes of them fall over in the kelim of Toyu down into the belts underneath, and eventually they come down into this world. So calls there biru hu lamayla, but the biru that Yaakov did was lamayla, and he said the biru was alidei Torah or mitzvahs. Now Yaakov didn't have Torah or mitzvahs per se, but it's brought down in the Siddur because of his great elevation. He was able to be mamshich and megala, those inyanim which we bring through Torah and mitzvahs. Since the whole birah is only in the inyan of toiv, Mela abiru u'alidei Torah or mitzvahs. So therefore, it's enough, the union of Torah or mitzvahs, and with that you can be mavad. Now, what does he mean that the union of Yaakov Avinu is the biru atoiv, and the biru of kedusha and toiv, how it is l'mayla? What does he mean? What does he mean by that? So it's brought down in Chassidus that if you have something that a certain, let's say you have silver or kesef, and you know that there's certain impurities in there, then there's two ways that you can deal with that situation. One way is that you can deal only with the silver, and you just try to draw the silver, bring that into your area where you want, and you leave behind the paselis, but you don't bother with the paselis. You just draw out the good part, and the paselis just gets put aside. So then you finish that, and then you see, but there's still quite a bit of kesef still mixed in there. So then you make another thing, but then you draw in a more delicate way, in a more powerful way. You draw out more kesef, and you leave more paselis, where the paselis becomes more noticeable. And then you keep drawing the good, and you leave behind you don't busy yourself with the evil. But what happens to the evil when you do that is you take out all the good. You get into all the good, and you elevate all the good of all the paselis gets more and more indicated and more, emphasized, because you're taking away all the things that were literally swallowing it in a way that you couldn't see them, and now every little dot of paselis becomes very noticeable. And what happens is that each time it gets more coarse, as you might say, the paselis, because you're taking away lower levels of the good kesef, but you're taking away the good, and the bad just keeps falling. So you elevate the toiv, and the bad just keeps falling from level to level. So that's what Yaakov Avinu did. And then there's another form of birur, and that is where you start with, you busy with the ra, and you try to take out the paselis, and you just leave the kesef behind, but they're mamela. That means that you're going milmata lamayla, you're working, as it were, from the bottom upwards, and that's a very difficult form of birur. And that's the type of birur that Yaakov wanted to undertake when he finished all this birur, and that's why he wanted to move towards Esav, because then he wanted to start the birur with the evil itself, and Kilo try and do something over there, try and, as it were, take out the little bit of good that was left in Esav by actually being busy with him. And it's a very high level of good, but it's hidden away in him and it's lost, because he's just the paselis. It's very hard to recognize. But if you draw away, if you're busy with the paselis, no matter lamata, trying to get in through the paselis to the good, then that's a much more difficult way of going upwards and of being mavara, what's left of the good inside the evil. But that's a very difficult task. But either to take out the good and just leave behind the evil, which is a high form of birur, that's an easier, in inverted commas, form of birur, because it's more milala lamata. You're starting off on a very high level, and you're just going down each time in good. You're just bringing out the better from the evil. Albeit that better becomes a lower level from step to step, but it is still, you're only busy with the kesef, you're only busy with the good. So that was the birur that Yaakov did in Tzayin Lova. That was put down in other places in Tzaddik, that the whole in that we talk about Olam Atzilas and all of those in Yonim Lamayla, Be'ika Yaakov Avinu, he arranged all that. He made Olam Atzilas the way it is Kaviyol today. As you might say, it was Be'ika Alidei Yaakov Avinu's Aveda. Prior to that, there were still traces of, certain effects of Tohu and certain inabilities of Atzilus to have the shleimus of the Gila Alakus that it should have, etc., etc. But Yaakov Avinu, he fixed all that up. In other words, he made Olam Atikon the way it should be. Now, was it a pshat that Yaakov Avinu saw immediately that those oiros fell inside the kelim of Tohu? He literally, Yaakov Avinu caught them immediately. They fell before they started going all the way down. And he said, there's a tremendous amount of toiv in here, these big netzuts of very high oiros. That's in you from Loivan Ho'elyain, Lovan, what he was referring to. But with this we understand why Lovan is sometimes referred to as Loivan Ho'elyain, so tremendously high Madrega, and other times he's called Lovan HaRosha. I mean, how can he be both? You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be a tremendously high level in Geser Shebekesa, and he's also a Rosha down here, Lamata. So that's the teretz. In his shoulders, he's very, very high, but he had a very heavy collapse, and the more Yaakov Avinu worked at him, as it were, the more he sort of went down, because Yaakov Avinu was taking out all the good from him, and the evil part of him was becoming more emphasized. And therefore, at the end, he chased after Yaakov and all Maaseh, and he wanted to get at Yaakov Avinu, and he revealed all of his rishus and what he was really up to. And Yaakov Avinu said, we have to build a machitza between me and you. You'll never pass. You'll never go past the machitza. That was this pile of stones that they put up. You had a gal, and Yaakov Avinu called it gal eid, and Lavan called it in Aramaic yoga sahadusa. And what they got to Arichas brought down over there in the toilets, because Yaakov Avinu realized that he had to keep away now that Lavan had such an afila that until a later point he wouldn't be able to deal directly with Lavan, but he wanted to see what he could do with Esau, because Esau was closer to him. Esau was his brother. Arichas, but over Esau and Lavan are not really all far one from the other. Just we could say that Esau is a certain detail maybe in the Klolos Einim which is represented by Lavan, which means that in a way Lavan is even worse than Esau. And I say that if you look in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, that's what you see, a very fascinating thing. It's written over there, that we say in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, and it's even a Mishnah, right near the end of Masechta Pesachim, but it's written over there that Arami Oived Avi, that the Arami, but that's Lavan, that's referring to Lavan. Arami, he tried to destroy my father. In other words, that Lavan was out, and that's what he says, somebody ordered something, and then it's written, Lavan bikesh lakel es hakel. That we say in the Haggadah, that Lavan, he wanted to uproot everything. He wanted to completely and utterly destroy the whole union of Kedusha that Yaakov Avinu represented, and what he'd already achieved also. So we see that Lavan, he was the Ika Rasha, Sheva Rashoim. And I gave him already to tell you a sort of a detailed gilui of it. The whole Ika was in the Mishnah over there, and in the Haggadah Shel Pesach we don't mention Esau, just maybe here or there. But we say that Bikesh Lavan La Koyer Es Ha Koyer, he wanted to completely uproot the whole union, and that's what we bring out in the it's what the Bikurim, and right at the end of the Devarim, when you bring Bikurim into the Beis Hamikdash, and you thank the Eibush, and just tell briefly with the history of the Jewish people. The Pesukim over there that you have to say when you bring the Bikurim into the Beis Hamikdash, we'll be doing that, take it from Yad, Korev Mamish, then you have to say, Arami Oived Avi, you got to say that phrase, which is quoted in the Mishnah. You got to say, their love on Arami, he wanted to destroy my father. No, he wanted to destroy everything. He was the Shorosh of all the Rashoyim and all the what you might call enemies of the Jewish people was Lavan. And the fascinating thing is, he was an uncle. He was the Feta Lavan. And Esau was also Esau's uncle. He's a brother. He's a brother of Yankee. So we see that the Ikea, and Amalek is also. Amalek is a nephew. Amalek, Rahman is Klan. He's Esau's Einiko. All of these unbelievable tzaras, they all come from what you might call the inner circle. But there's not a discussion on the history of the Jewish people at this particular moment, and therefore we have to swing back, that we shouldn't get too involved in Arichas when we get to that. But anyway, to get back to our theme, so Lavan, he's the shorosh of all the Leivin or Elin is tremendously highlight, that falls down in the different Netzutzis, the Kelim, which they fall. Yaakov Avinu, he caught him at the beginning of the Nafila, and he said, wow, this is going to be a big Nafila around here, but he's got all these very intense oiros which are there, and Yaakov Avinu brought them out, and he made Olam HaAtzilas. But if he said that Olam HaAtzilas is made out of the Birurim of Tohu, in other words, the things that were supposed to fall, Yaakov Avinu took the most precious silver, and he managed to get it out before it had an Emerson Afila, and he brought it in, and he made that into Olam Atikun, and then he borrowed a new kalim. He bought a new, it's a whole big beer, and says where you got the kalim from, and the rest of it fell down into Elam HaBriah. In other words, it became already yesh mi'ayin, became a yesh. It was already heavier. It was more trace of the paselas, and then he drew out again the higher aspect, and so he made be'ika Elam HaAtzilus and Elam HaBriah, and maybe Yetzirah. But mamish down here in the whole mix-up of this physical world, Yaakov Avinu didn't get that far. At that point, he was be'ika, he was pearl, the bureau of Toyu in Atzilus and maybe in Bria of Yetzirah, in the Olam Hasarayala Lamaila. And he was doing it in this haven of what we call the Bureau Milmaila Mata, taking out the high and letting the Ra, not being busy with the Ra, letting it fall with the Mamela. So each time it falls, it becomes a little bit more heavy, because the better part of it has been taken out already, and therefore it falls a bit further. In other words, he didn't try to stop that nafila of the Ra, he tried to take the Toiv, that it shouldn't be dragged down with the Ra, and from that he built up the whole union of Atzilas, and so it's brought down in Iron Bays and other places. But the Rebbe says that Yaakov Avinu, literally, he built up the whole union of Elam HaTikun B'Shleimat. Even though the actual Shviras HaKelim, the Torah, was at the beginning of the whole creation. But the Ikka one who made a whole Seder and put everything, as you might call it, in its ultimate right, well, that was Yaakov Avinu. So now you get some idea of what the others were up to, what was their whole union. And Yaakov Avinu, he wanted to bring Moshiach. That's his one. Yaakov Avinu, he wanted to bring to the ultimate Gilui, because he said he's already bought the Tachas HaBira. He's only got one Bira left, but that's down here in this world. And he said, if I get Asa working with me together, then we'll be able to do it quick. Because Asa, he's the big, how do you call it? He's the big Machutin down here. He's the one that's in all the mess. If he's ready to be Mizparna, he's willing to go upwards. They can get everything done, and we can say we want Moshiach, and we'll have Moshiach now. That's what Yaakov Gizot, that was his whole union. So therefore, said the Rebbe, that was the Bira Milmaila. That's what he means by the expression, well, that was a Bira Milmaila. A Bira, for that, he said, it's enough to union from Torah or mitzvah. It's enough just to do Torah or mitzvahs in a proper way, and that causes that Bira, Huba Toiv, you don't have to have anything like tshuva and all these in yonim, and you don't need to go down into the Ra and fight with the Melchama with the Ra, but just by being Megala Toiv, you bring about and you strengthen this tikkun now at Islam, Lamaila in the Elam Etzal he said, Abira de Esav. He said, the Bira with Esav, what Esav with the Inen of the Ra, is who Abira b'pchinas Ra de Noiga. Why does he say it's got to do with you from Ra in Klippas Noiga? Because the emissary Ra of the Gimel Klippas HaTameyas, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Perek Zayin, that we don't have the quirk. That's too far down for us. The Neshamas, the way they are now, don't have the quirk to get down that far. Mamish in the Gimel Klippas HaTameyas. However, that's not so, threatening, because if you're Mavara the Ra Benoiga, which we can do, then Mamela you create a situation where all those Gimel Klippas HaTamez will become anyway bottle in the great Toiv that will be Miskala Ale Deiseh. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Lamed Zayin over there. And if we'll be Mavara all the Beruin that we can do in Noiga, but Mamela world will be, and the Klippas will just fall away, but the Gimel Klippas HaTamez will fall away, but Mamela. That's what he writes over there. So that's what Yaakov wanted to do. He wanted to carry out the Bira of the Ra of Noiga, because it's possible to elevate that Ra into Toiv, and to be Mahapachet into a Dova Toiv, because it's not complete Ra. It's Ra how it is in Klippas Noiga. In other words, it's still got a certain nitzutz in it, Begolui of Toiv. So therefore, it's a Kiesa B'Shoel Shoi, Oil Amaila Miyoi. He said, B'Shoel Shoi, Esa's from a very high Madrega, B'Pchinas Makifim de Toihu. He's in the union from Makifim Toihu. It wasn't even by Makifim de Toihu, because like we said before, the Oiris in Toihu, B'Ika, they withdrew. It was only the Netzutzes of them that hung on inside the cave. But the Ika Oiris of Toihu withdrew, and they became Dovik in the Eibush Shalamayla. So those Oiris of Toihu, they're makif legabi l'matzilas, because they still remain a royal madrega, and they, as it were, too high even for royal matzilas. They're called makifim, the toihu, and that's what the Alter writes in if you look up in Pasha Vayishla, in Torah Oil, the Alter writes several times he uses that expression makifim the toihu, that Yaakov Avinu, by going to Esau, sending to him, he was trying to get at those makifim the toihu and bring them into the kelim of tikkun, and that's what he calls it there. Yeah, the oil is the toihu kelim to tikkun. Now you heard that expression before, and if you're not, then you have to do a bit of a shachar with the Chabadski Chassidischkeit. Why didn't you hear that expression atkoi? The Rebbe said it on many occasions. The Rebbe Melech Moshiach, that the whole inyan was to bring the oiris to Toyu in the kelim of tikkun. That was the whole inyan. So the one who began that was Yaakov Avinu. He wanted to do that, but Esav wasn't ready, and therefore he wasn't able to really get started in a proper way, because Esav was, in the meantime, Esav had been munach in all the shtusim from Elam Hazeh, and he was all munach in the klippos and all, just like he was before Yaakov went to Beis Loa. And therefore Yaakov was very disappointed and tremendously, taken aback when he saw that Esav wasn't klal ready. And therefore he realized it would take a lot of time until we Mavara Esav. And that's the inyan of, like we saw in Pasha Teles, that's the inyan of Limud Torah, how B'doiro is in the Golos, that didn't learn Torah, and they were Megala, all these Zeres Al Torah, and that was little by little, it was Mavara Esav. It couldn't just be done with one big go. And then the Rebbe said, and now, in our time, Esav is already ready. He's already ready to be Mispara, just like Yaakov hoped he would be. Now he's ready. But you got to say the right things to him, and you got to come to him with the right cave, and you got to be Megala to him, Elakus. Well, then he will be ready to be Mispara. But the great unfathomable tragedy of our times is that ever since the First World War and before it, you've had all these chevra going around telling Esau and Be'ika, the United States of America and Russia, telling them, oh no, there's no such thing as Elikus Bayit, and there's only a state and there's a national home with all the other baloney that's never been and never will be chas v'sholem part of Yidden. There's a national homeland, and the Goyim gave it to us. It's ours because the Goyim said we can have it. But that's the inyan of the Tzionis. And Davkis, they try to sell all this baloney to Esav, and therefore he got the whole wrong picture, and he's fallen back into the old Esav that he was. And therefore, unfortunately, a lot of the tzaras, Beregazeh, come from Esav. Oh, but not because he really wants to do it. They persuaded him, and they talked it into his head decades, over the last few decades. And therefore you take this poor old goyim called Bush, if you were to take him, and you were to say to him, listen here, do you really hold by all this? You really hold by that you should give back the whole Holy Land to these gangsters and these murderers, he would say, no, I don't really hold by it, but that's what they tell me all the time that they want. They've been telling me ever since the Six-Day War. The Rebbe said 2 weeks after the Six-Day War, I found a newspaper in my house at the bottom of a cover. I was cleaning out for Pesach. There's a newspaper for 2 weeks after the Six-Day War. There's a big picture of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe is saying that they're already sending shluchim to America and to Russia and to London. We're not. And they're saying to all the people, oh yes, we're all back. Don't worry, it's all going to go back. Just give us a bit of time. We'll give back the whole caboodle. Right way back then. So ever since then, they've been telling the American president and the Russian, if he was there, he's not even there anymore. He went completely kaput. Yeah, but they're going to do it. No, we're going to give it. So the Americans just couldn't believe it. The Rebbe said it. That's what the Rebbe said in the article. The Rebbe said they can't believe it. This is what they're being told. But after a few decades, you keep getting hacked the same thing, and that becomes your policy. That's what they want. That's where we have to adjust everything. That's the way it has to be. That was this Goylem, this present-day Goylem. All he knows is that for years they've been hacking him in copper, and not him with his predecessors. They've been hacking him in copper. They have to give it all away to the gangsters and to the murderers. And nowadays he's in a terrible situation, this President Walker, and he's running the whole thing, because he doesn't even have any more who to give it to. All these idiots have all fallen down over their old slogans and their Hagenens, one with the other. There's really no leader anymore. So he comes up, the latest idea is he's just going to go into the Knesset, or he's going to go somewhere in the world, and he just put down a notice somewhere, and they just say, whoever you guys are, come and take it. That's what he's holding by now, because he doesn't have anybody to give it to. There's no official leader of the so-called Palestinians, and that's exactly what the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach said. He said, if you ever deal with them, you'll end up in a place where you won't have anybody to talk to, because they can't talk amongst themselves. They can't talk with you. And the Rebbe said that. I mean, it's written, Shochet al Gabi Lovo. That the Rebbe said, Mamish Nevuah, is everything that's happening. The Rebbe, he already said it decades ago. That's exactly what's going to happen. He's going around like a dog without his tail, because he doesn't know who to give it to. Who's going to take it? The whole Eretz Yisrael, mit the Yerushalayim Atikim, the whole thing. He's just dying to give it back to someone. There's nobody to give it back to. So the latest idea is, what's he going to do? He'll just go and he'll take a paper from the Knesset. Well, the whole Knesset really belongs to the Greek Orthodox Church. You realize that? The whole land and the whole building of the Knesset belongs to the church. So just imagine what the Knesset is. If I remember, he's going to take a paper and put it in the Knesset and go over somewhere at Kreisfood, maybe to Washington, and just put it down on a table, and he's going to say, whoever wants, come and take the whole Eretz. Nimm die ganze Yehuda mit Shayim mit Holstein. Kach. And all that's happening because they didn't tell Esav. The Rebbe said, if you tell Esav nowadays, he'll be Makabel. Because he's ready. The Rebbe said clearly, but you've got to tell him the truth. You've got to talk to him what I take you. You've got to say, where the Yidden, where the Balabatim are here. Where the Tachlis are the ganze creation. If I'm going to tell him, and he'll be Makabel. Pete forget. Hafuk, but even a key mavil. They've been doing that for decades. Pink the Hafer. Oh no, not the Balabatim. You are the Balabatim. We don't really belong there. We don't really have it. Gesundheit, take it away. So then he said, well, okay, forget that. But Pikuach Nevish, the Cholapochers realize that it's Pikuach Nevish. Forget Eretz. Forget all the miles of Eretz. Of a Pikuach Nefesh, you can't do it every inch of Eretz Yisrael, and they get to Pikuach Nefesh. If you let them in, and then that's what the Rebbe came up with the Toshin Cortez. It's an open piece of Shulchan Aruch. That wherever Yidden are, they're threatened by Goyim, you're not allowed to let them in. You know, even if they say, oh no, we're not going to do anything to you, you must not let them in. Because they're likely to conquer you once they see that they got in that far. They'll just want everything. I say, stayed in Shulchan Aruch. And they showed it to one of these Alter Rabbanim, which I don't want to mention his name, from the non-Hasidim. And I said, what do you do with it? The Lubavitch is going to open riot. I said, an unbelievable riot. What do you say to that? He just said, oh, that's not the spirit of our old forefathers. That's what he said. He didn't say it. But it's the Shulchan Aruch. That's not the spirit of our forefathers. That's the Shulchan Aruch. And the Rambam, everybody paskins that. Kulam, it's a Gemara Masechet Eruvin, and nobody differs with it. It's one of the few things in Torah there's no one like it. Everybody halted does the dialogue. I stay clear. He showed to all these non-Hasidim and everybody, even the Polish and the take one saying, but what's part? It's a halacha mefureshes. The way you put in a matzah from Pikuach Nefesh, you have to do everything to save them and to prevent there being even a Sofi. A Pikuach Nefesh. And nobody has ever answered that. All these big Jodi with all big hats and all the beards to the ground, the big long coats and their gals about this thick, but utterly in yonder. Not one of them has ever answered the Rebbe on that part. Everybody shows them and says, bad and and something else, but they never actually answered the Rebbe. But he said it once, but the Rebbe said, I'm still waiting for somebody to answer me. What do they say about the Shulchan Aruch that I showed them? The Pikuach Nefesh Deiches Hak. Kainat Nishizakor. And he'll just go the whole time. We're just getting closer and closer to absolute Pikuach Nefesh. Ain't Kamoya. I talked to these guys and I said, yeshivas, we've got to have these yeshivas, we've got to have money. I can't figure it. It's just beyond me. Well, it's for sure beyond the Rebbe. And that's the whole mistake. And that's what the Rebbe means in the Maimon. That Esav was like that then, but now he's different. But he's going back to the way he was because the Yidden took him back. They wouldn't tell him the truth. Anyway, what's the point of getting upset? The main thing, Mashiach has to come.
Oh, no.
Take of me